Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello everybody, welcome to our Wednesday Leading Change episode this week with Wilson Govindji. Hey Wilson, welcome back.
Thank you. Good morning, Vasco.
Good morning indeed. And for all of those listening to us somewhere in the planet, maybe it's not morning for you. Today we talk about change, and we don't talk about just any kind of change. We talk about change where we need to exhibit what I call change leadership. Very often we hear about change in the context of managing the change. Well, the call to action to all of you Scrum Masters out there, and I guess the insights we will get from Wilson's story today is that we need to be change leaders. We need to be an active part of the changes we're involved with. But let's listen today to Wilson's story. So, Wilson, take it away.
Yeah, well, let me just start by saying that change is hard. And as a new Scrum Master, early in my career as a Scrum Master, I found out the hard way that not everyone was excited as I was about doing Scrum or Agile or even change in general. So there I was. I joined a team in a large organization that were, or at least they thought they were, doing Agile, whatever that meant for them. So as soon as I got for the first time into that building in their open space, I got very impressed with seeing all the walls totally decorated with Agile posters, the Agile manifesto, the pictures about the different roles and many other things. So this was an effort of the consultancy team that was in charge with training. However, I think that they did a good job on training people on Scrum, but they failed to instill the right mindset, or at least they forgot to train the leadership as well. So I felt that people were saying all the right words, but they were doing all the wrong things. So they were doing the same thing they always did, following the same bureaucratic process that the organization followed, a huge gate-phased model where anything would take weeks and plenty of approvals for things to happen, let alone software being developed and put in front of the customer. So although I was very excited to help people in their Agile journey, I found they were not very interested to be helped. And why? Well, because everything around them was the same. The incentives, the way that they were evaluated, the company process, etc. So despite the company sent everyone for training, they didn't explain to people why they wanted to become Agile. So people simply acted in the same way. Right. And I think this is very usual, unfortunately, this kind of situation. And it was later in my career that I kind of learned about John Kotter's 8-step process for leading change. I don't know if you're familiar with that one, Vask. So it's a model that I use when I coach leadership as well, when they want to change something very significantly.
Because usually that's where it starts, right? Especially bigger transformations start at leadership. So tell me one thing, though. What is the job that you want John Kotter's change model to do when you're talking to leadership? What is it that you want them to understand?
Mostly, I want leadership to understand that it's not enough to create a plan and socialize that in a PowerPoint and expect things to change. And want them to understand that change is really, really, really difficult. It requires a lot of energy. It requires alignment of a lot of people and people that have influence, because at the end of the day, we are still working in an organization. There are still hierarchies. There are still lines that some teams feel that they cannot cross. So that requires leadership to be totally engaged and to lead actually the change, right? And I think the model starts with establishing a sense of urgency. That's the first step. It's leaders to kind of understand, okay, the model we are working, it's not working, or our industry has changed and we need to keep up. And
Yeah, and the way we tell that story is also very important. So it as you present that to leaders, right? Like, okay, so guys, the first step is establish a sense of urgency, right? So what are you doing to do that? Like, what are the messages? What is the information you pass along? How do you interact with your teams, right? And I think that's very important because that helps them to understand. Okay, so my role is not just to ask for the change, is to actually establish something that will help the change take hold in the organization.
exactly. And that kind of reduces as well the levels of complacency, because long established companies, they still live on the past success, but they forgot that things have changed since then, right? So things have changed and we need to change as well. And that's the kind of sense of urgency that the leaders need to make it transparent. And then the next step is creating a guiding coalition. And that means it cannot be just one single leader in a part of organization that wants change. You need to rally other leaders as well, because ultimately the change will need to take effect and we will need to change processes on other parts of the organization. So we need to have this guiding coalition. We need to have a lot of leadership, manpower there to kind of drive this. And then is developing a vision and a strategy. Okay, we have this problem. This is where we want to be. And this is a strategy that we want to follow, but we will assess where we are. So people kind of understand, okay, why we are changing and where we want to be. Okay. And then communicate that change vision a lot and a lot. It's not enough just to come on all hands and saying about the change. Is using that change vision on everything we do, in every meeting and plannings and everything we do. Is we should assess, okay, where do we want to be? What we are doing today, is it aligned to the vision or not? Because
And
people
every
forget
day,
that
right? Like, exactly,
every
what
day.
are we doing today? Well, okay, so what does the change mean today, right? It's not just, and you said it very well, it's not enough to go on the all hands meetings and talk about the change. You need to be the change every single day in your interaction with your reports and all of that. And this is also one of the reasons why I like to call this episode the change leadership episode, because change is led, it is not managed. Change doesn't happen, you lead it, right? Like, you help others understand what they need to do, you help others take initiative, and that's what leadership is all about.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And there are four more steps, Vash. The next one is empowering employees for broad-based action. And this is actually giving them, so once people understand where we want to go, why do we want to go there, is letting them as well find ways on how to achieve that vision as well. And we need to empower them. So there is no point if an employee needs to fill up a form, if they need to install a piece of software, a notepad plus plus, for example, right? That is not how people will change. So we need to empower people as well, give them some sorts of responsibility and accountability, but letting them find some solutions. And then generating short-term wins. It's important to celebrate these short-term wins. We cannot just say, oh, we want to become the number one company down the line. Is okay, let's create these short-term wins so that we know where we are and celebrate them. And then consolidating gains and producing more change. That's another step. Okay, that we got this gain, we're successful. How do we change even more? How do we change the broader organization? And then last one is anchoring the new approaches in the culture. So at a certain point, it will not become something that was a change, but it will become the new norm. It's the culture of how we do things around here, because ultimately that's what culture is how we do things around here. It's not what we want them to be or what we have written in on the walls with our culture is this or that. So yeah, that's why I love this 8-step process. It's not a linear process, obviously, as you know, like any other model, it goes back and forth, but it's important at least to follow some of these steps, especially around the sense of urgency and developing that vision and communicating.
And I would add to that the steps that are described in that model also help us Scrum Masters communicate to leadership how they can help us execute on the change that they want us to help them with, right? Like, because the role we take as Scrum Masters is to be change agents. It's inevitable. It's part of everything we do. But at the end of the day, it's the leaders of the organization that are leading the organization, and we need their help in order to be able to reinforce that change and to justify perhaps sometimes even hard decisions that we need to make with the team. So it's important to have a model. The John Kotter's change model is one, but there are others that we've talked about here on the podcast. So definitely take a look at it. So Wilson, thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you for letting me share this.
Leading change is one of the core skills we must acquire, but it is only one of the steps towards our success as Scrum Masters. Tomorrow, on Success Thursday, we will talk about how to define success for the Scrum Master role, we'll cover tips on how to measure your way to that position, and most importantly, how to develop that focus on continuous improvement that is as important for Scrum Masters as it is for teams. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.